Welcome everybody to Catfish Weekly. Along with Chuck Davison, I'm Lyle Stokes. Uh, Tonight's show is presented by Whisker Wear Apparel. We have a couple of things to talk about before we get involved with our guest tonight. You want to take off on that, Chuck?
Oh yeah. If everybody remembers the big Christmas giveaway, Scott Woody won that. He's been on. He's watched the show every night since we've been on. He always comes on, tells us how great a show we've done. He's really a good participant. Um, his father has been diagnosed with malignant brain tumors. They found 8 of them, 6 to 8 they believe. He's got to go through 10 rounds of radiation. He's already received 3. His father's name's Larry Woody. Um, and he spent a lot of time with Scott doing outdoor things and all that. So Scott's a big part of the Catfish Weekly family. So if everybody would keep Scott and his father both in your prayers, that would be great. And I want to congratulate Jonathan and Jackie Cooksey from Cronus, Mississippi. They came over and fished the Wheeler tournament with the Alabama Catfish Trail Saturday night. They brought home a first place. They're a father-son team sponsored by Bottom Dwellers Tackle, and some of the greatest people you'll ever meet. They're really down to earth. I hope I can fish with them some more. And we had a good group of people show up. The tournaments are getting bigger and bigger, but we just had a ball at that tournament, and weigh in at 2 in the morning was just so much fun. It was great. That's about all I got, Lyle.
Well, I am so proud of Daniel for what he's doing down there with that Alabama Catfish Trail. He's doing an outstanding job. It appears to me that his participation level is growing to where he's doing at least as good or better than some of the bigger groups that has tournaments in that area, and he runs them professionally and is just doing an outstanding job, and kudos to him for that. Um, Many of you know a lady that's been in catfishing industry with us online on different forums and talks and things for years. Her name's Glenda McFarland. Glenda lost her brother last week, and anybody that gets a chance might send her a note. I know it'll make her feel better. She watches the show whenever she can. She's an outstanding lady, makes some of the most beautiful trophies for not only catfishing but other sports. And she's down in Arkansas, and I know she'd appreciate it if you just drop her a note. Some buddies of mine over in Springfield, Illinois, have been tearing it up this year. They actually won a tournament over there over the weekend, and I want to give a shout out to Bill Parfit and Jason Rath. Those guys have been on fire. They're not nationally recognized as in the circles, but these guys are tough everywhere they go, and if you go to Springfield, Illinois, you're going to deal with them, and they're going to hurt your feelings if they get a chance, and they usually do. They always do me, but for some reason I struggle over there, but there are a couple of really good guys, and they have really been putting some quality fish in the boat on that lake, so congratulations to Jason and Bill. Tonight, we're very fortunate to have one of the premier fishermen in the nation with us, Carl Morris Jr. Again, set him on fire this weekend in the Cabela's tournaments, I believe. And thank you so much for spending your time and being on the show with us, Carl. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Lyle, for the invite. I appreciate it.
We try to get as many people on as we can, and when I find guys like you that are willing to do it and have the setup, it makes it a lot easier. There's a lot of good people that we've asked to be on the show that they can't because they either have poor internet connection or they don't have webcams or whatever. And if we do it by telephone, I have to sit there and hold the phone up to the speaker on the webcam, and that gets, it's really hard to do, and my phone will run dead. All kinds of things go wrong. So I was just thrilled when you agreed to do this, and I know Chuck's got some questions for you, so I'm going to turn it over to him, and you guys can have at it.
All right. Thanks, Lyle.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Carl. How's it going, man?
Not too bad, Chuck. How you been?
Good. Man, how do you do it? Tell us. No, Yeah, we've been following. Everybody mostly follows the Cabela's and the Bass Pro Series stuff, and pretty much your name is consistently in the top three. A very recognized fisherman, throughout the nation. Um, how do you balance yourself so well, from work and fishing, and keep it where you can, concentrate on work, and still do these fishing things and all that.
Well, I'd say the biggest thing there is I've got some good people behind me, Chuck. I mean, I've got a good woman with Amanda who helps take a lot of burden off me on things, and without her, she makes a lot of this catfishing happen as well. So she takes care of the dirty work, getting me to where I'm going and getting me set up so I can focus more on just the fishing part.
That's great. Um, do you ever get her out on the water and put her on some pigs?
Every once in a while, she usually makes a trip to Alabama with me at least once a year, just me and her, where she gets to go out and fish.
That's great. Okay. When there's a big tournament being organized for next year on the Mississippi River, and it has potential to be one of the biggest ones ever that's ever been put on. Um, what do you think about the location and the timing of everything on this event that's being planned out there? What's your thoughts on it?
Man, I think that right time of year, it could be a big bite, could be a great tournament. I mean, you've always got the challenges of the Mississippi to deal with in planning an event that size. Water level, up, down, boat ramp access, and all that good stuff. So be an interesting layout to see how things work out. Because unfortunately, you're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature and what she does months beforehand. As far as how that goes. But I tell you what. That time of year, it could be on fire down there, and it could be a ball of fun. So I'm keeping my eye close on that one.
I hear you. That's the kind of thing I like. The Monsters of the Ohio. I've only been able to go once last year, and now I can't wait until every year I'm gonna be going. The fishery's not the best in the world, but anytime you can get together with a bunch of catfishermen and go out and have fun, everybody's got the exact same chance to do the same thing. So everybody's on equal grounds anyway.
Oh, I
Um,
tell you what, when I went to Monsters, it's been 4 years back when I started going. I mean, that's always been one of our favorite tournaments every year. I mean, it's been a well-ran tournament. Like you said, there's no other tournament right now at least in my neck of the woods that I can get to, that you get that many fishermen from all across the United States that you meet a lot of good people. And I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy about catfishing is sometimes just the parking lot talks part of the best time. So I enjoy meeting a lot of new guys, and I've learned a lot of things sitting at a tailgate at 11 o'clock at night in a hotel parking lot.
um, when was your first time you remember being in any kind of a big magazine article or a newspaper ad or anything like that when you really placed good in a catfishing, or just plain out did an article on catfishing?
Well, it was 2012. We had a pretty good season in 2012 where we won a few tournaments, and we got the Angler of the Year and championship through Cabela's that year. That was when I got to do the first in fisherman article. I know I was tickled to death when I got the phone call. I'd never done anything like that, and that was kind of like a crowning achievement at the time. I was just that tickled me to death. So I'll say 2012 is when I did the first serious anything. So.
Yeah, that's great. It was, y'all just came out of nowhere, by storm, and it's great, that y'all and the Messingales and you know a bunch of guys like that are the best in the country. When they all get to the same place together and get to compete against each other. I mean, it's just, even if you're not there, I'm like, when are they gonna post the results? And it's if we can ever get this thing on television, and get it in front of people on Saturday and Sunday mornings when they're sitting around, I mean, it's going to be a hit. And I just cannot believe it has not got to that level yet. You see it every once in a while on an outdoor show or something, but man, if they could just do a tournament on, just like they do the
Yeah.
Bassmasters.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. If they could get, if they could get monsters on the Ohio, you take that tournament setting right there, you film that. I mean, people would love to watch that. Now, if you could get some of that size tournament down somewhere, like you said, if you get that down in Alabama on Wheeler Lake, or over the Mississippi River where, they're pulling some big hogs out. I mean, people would tune into that. I really agree. It's just, there's been several attempts. Just it seems like nothing's ever got any feet underneath of it yet.
Yeah. What's your favorite stop on the national trail? Your favorite place to go that's got the best 5 fish limit and where you can just really blow it out.
Oh man, that's tough. New Madrid, Crystal City, Missouri. Crystal City, Missouri is one of my favorite places to go. We've been going there. We fished it with Cabela's. I don't know, it was 2008, 9, before we even knew what we were doing out there. I mean, we went to Crystal City the first time. I got on that river for the very first time, and I didn't know what the heck to do. I was tying so many leaders. I think we caught in 3 days. We caught one fish for 5 pounds, and I left there. I hit a buoy going down, drifting down the river, wasn't paying attention, got a red buoy. Yeah, it was all bad, but that was my first stop, and I told myself then I was going to figure out how to fish it. And I finally figured out how to fish Crystal City.
All right, I heard that. Yeah, there's some really good weights out of that Missouri River. It's one of the best places in the United States to really go and catch some really nice fish. Do you fish it any local events besides the Monster, the Rising Sun, or any of those? Is there any of those tournaments you really look forward to every year that you make sure you frequent?
I don't fish. I haven't got a chance to fish a Rising Sun. No reason. It's just always been a scheduling conflict. I mean, I fish a couple local tournaments on some lakes up here. They're not nationally known tournaments or anything, but there's a couple of channel cat tournaments that I've hit for probably 10 years now that I still go religiously hit every year. But none of the big ones around here at all besides Monsters.
Great. So when you go to these the tournaments you have to travel the most, when you try to hit out the James River, you come down and hit Wheeler. What kind of system do you set up where you say, well, I'm gonna try to budget my tournaments by 2 a month, by 3 a month? How do you go about doing that to keep a good balance?
Well, typically I look at the schedules. I usually predetermine the tournaments we're going to fish usually by the first of the year. We sit down, we look at the schedule, because I mean, I run a landscaping company, so a lot of times my winter time, is pretty well at the mercy of snow removal. So I can't do much in the winter, and then spring is a little tough until I get into late April, early May. And we look at the tournaments. This year we was fortunate. We had several Cabela's events right in our backyard. We had 3 on the Ohio River here. I mean, all within about 150 miles of me. So that that made this year. We fished more tournaments this year than what we normally would, just due to the fact that they were so much closer for us. But we predetermine it, like I said, at the beginning of the year, and kind of nail it down so we can start studying the water all throughout the year. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. A lot of places I know, you don't get to show up and do all the pre-fishing you want, especially if you go somewhere for the very first time. Um, do you get on Google Maps and your Navionics and just sit there and study and look at the topographical and the everything?
I'm probably actually a borderline freak with that. Yeah. I spend many an hour on the couch with my iPad and my Navionics app, just staring at river, flipping back and forth, looking at contours, and just, a lot of times, last week, we had 100 miles of river we could fish from Memphis all the way up to Dryersburg. I had never been on that section of river once, so trying to pick, that spot you're going to fish, on Saturday out of 100 miles of river, it's something you can't just pull out in a boat ramp and say, I think I'll go this way.
Yeah.
You got to have some sort of a, clue of, what general vicinity you want to go in. And, sometimes I'll look at a map and, I'll sit there and I'll tell, my partner, hey, that's the spot. That's where they're going to be at. we pull out on the river and look at it, and no, that's not the right spot. But we'll have, we'll pick usually 7 to 8 predetermined areas that we want to go look at, kind of narrow it down. And, hopefully that, one of those areas are close by, because sometimes it might be not in that exact area, but you go up another mile or down another mile, you'll find what you're looking for. But it's really trying to be prepared and nail it down, because like you said, we just don't have the time. We get out there, and we get a day on the water. When you got 100 miles and 10 hours of daylight, to be able to get out there on it and look at it and get to a meeting, it's pretty tough.
So it there's a whole lot of more work involved than just what you do in the boat. Do all your research, all your homework. And make sure your gear is always in top equipment.
Yeah.
Do you got any more tips that you'll let these guys know that, to help with preparation, mentally and homework wise, that could really help them succeed in tournaments?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've always done is just be prepared. I mean, there's a lot of time that goes into things, kind of like you said, getting gear set up. Shoot, leader time. You get down there in Mississippi River, you know automatically you're probably going to go through a X amount of leaders. Just because if you're down there, unless you're fishing in an area that you know real well. We go down. We nail down the mapping. So we look at it, so we're not wasting time on the water. In areas we shouldn't be. We take our, we'll make sure our gear is ready before we go. Before it goes into the boat, everything's ready to go. We've got, everything oiled up, fixed from the weekend before, relined or whatever that is. Sinkers restocked. We've got everything set up that way. Down to tying leaders. I mean, you can lose a lot of time out of your pre-fishing day sitting there tying leaders and, goofing around. If you're at a spot where you're trying to figure out how to fish them, and you want to see if you're getting a couple pools somewhere, you got to be ready to go. Well, if you ain't got nothing tied on to fish with, well, there's 10 minutes here, there's 10 minutes there. Next thing you know, at the end of the day, you wrapped up an hour and a half, worth of wasted time you could have been looking. So it's, I guess I'll say just really trying to maximize all of our time and just being prepared and being organized, I guess.
Yeah, that 8 hours during that tournament just flies by.
It does.
And you never ever have enough time ever, and that last minute fish, it always, most time it's the one that pays off. Could you let us know about when you first hit the water in the morning? How do you go ahead and see the way that you need to be fishing? If you need to be dragging, drifting, anchoring, what bait they're going to want. How do you organize everything to see what the fish want and how they're going to feed and all that stuff?
Well, that scenario will differ a little bit by body of water. I mean, certain body of waters, I pretty much, know what I'm going to do when I get there, to a certain extent. When I go down to Wheeler, I know I'm pretty much, there's not a lot of current, at this time of year. We're going to be pulling baits, dragging them through or suspending them, more often than not. When I go, Mississippi River, we knew we were going to be, either anchored down walking baits or, drifting down and bouncing. We pretty much knew that already. It's just figuring out, when we got down the Mississippi River, it's, trying to figure out, what we need. Is it a 3-ounce, 4-ounce, 5-ounce, 6-ounce sinker? What do we need? That's what we got to adjust to when we get there. It's kind of, we already got our style usually determined. It's just a matter of fine tuning it, and then, it's a matter, you throw out, you're dragging a pole, you're suspending a pole, which one's getting more bites, Well, if I'm catching all my fish suspended, obviously I'm going to change all 6 poles over to suspended for a while, and up my odds. If I'm catching them dragging, well, I'm going to try to put 1 out, or 2 out behind the boat farther and 2 right off the back, so I can drag 4 poles, down through there. It just depends on what way we find out on Friday we're getting most of the bites, and we kind of gear towards that, on Saturday.
Yeah. What about, you're talking about making adjustments. And a lot of times, there's things that'll happen that forces you to make adjustments, even that you don't want to make, as such as cold fronts and current. Could you tell us about some major adjustments that you've made and pulled off really good finishes by making the right decisions and the right adjustments at the right times?
Well, in my opinion, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is, everybody wants to throw out 2 pound of bait. They think the bigger the bait, the bigger the fish. Me, I always look at a cold front when the pressure's up. I'm always throwing smaller bait most of the time. Pressure's down, I'll go a little bit bigger. And again, pre-fishing, you'll determine that as well. But that's the thing. I mean, you can be out there. Seems like one day they can be eating half skipjacks, as fast as you can throw them out there. You know, Next day they want the smallest piece of bait you can put in front of them. We've got a lot of 40 and 50 and 60 pound fish. Actually on a piece of skipjack probably cut maybe an inch wide chunk at best, and we've caught a lot of fish like that. Those are the major adjustments. Is usually the depth of water, because especially all of a sudden you're out there pre-fishing for a couple days and you get a cold front that comes through. Those fish that might have been sitting in 25 foot might move down to 35, 40 foot on that ledge. Those are the major adjustments. A lot of people get too set, and fish in the same spot. You got to move with the fish, I guess. That's the thing. I guess I would kind of say you got to move up and down with the fish.
All right, that's some good advice right there. All right, Lyle, you got anything for him?
I do, as a matter of fact. I've been kind of waiting on that, and you covered some of it. Carl, I wanted to ask you, we was talking about bait and stuff, and what is it that determines if you change a presentation of a bait to fish? Is it the fact that they're not hitting it one way or another, or is it the fact that you're using two different rig setups and one's working and one's not, or is it whether you're seeing fish suspended or on the bottom, or what reason causes you to make an adjustment like that?
Well, I mean, kind of all the above there. I mean, a lot of times, like I said, we'll hang out as many poles as we can if we're in a body of water that we can, fish 6 rods. We'll end up with some chunk, we'll end up with some head, we'll suspend some, drag some, and just as the day goes on, you just kind of naturally narrow that down. And if you end up catching 4 fish dragging and you only caught 1 fish suspended, we're going to gear more towards the dragging. Same with the baits. I mean, we'll hang all different kinds of baits out. We'll have one pole that'll have slab on it. We'll have another pole with a baby piece of bait on it. We'll have a small little chunk on one. We'll throw a gut pocket on one. Whatever, just try to throw a mess out there and figure out, okay, they keep hitting on the head and the big midsection today. And we'll throw that on Saturday. Some days it's just chunk. I mean, I think some guys get too caught up on fishing with a head all the time and think that's what they got to have. Some days they like chunk. I guess they're no different than us. Some day we like this. Some day we like that. So.
Exactly right. When you go to a tournament, say we're going to Monsters of Ohio, and I know that you'll be there. I feel like you will.
Yep.
How far are you willing to go from a takeoff point to fish?
Typically, I keep a 25-mile range. I mean, my boat, for one, it'll do about 35, 38, but it ain't the fastest boat in the world. I sacrifice a little comfort for a little speed in her. But I think people try to overwhelm themselves again, and they try to look at they want to look at 100 miles of river. Well, narrow that down. In that 25 miles, there's fish somewhere. I mean, typically if I go up, or if I go down, I go down. I usually don't do both. Wherever I go from the boat ramp at, I pick a direction and I concentrate on that area, because somewhere in that 20 miles there's fish. Somewhere in there is. You just got to slow down and find them, and I think everybody makes that mistake. They want to fly to where they've caught fish before. Well, shoot, there's fish there somewhere. You just got to spend time looking for them.
Well, I agree, and I think that is very true. That people will go to a place and they'll get on some fish, and next year they'll spend the majority of the time in that area. And if they're not there, they're not there.
They're not there. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're there one year. That doesn't mean they'll be there tomorrow, next week, next year. And they may be a long way away, and they just might be in deeper water or more shallow water, or up or down the river system from where you caught them before. But I feel like that a lot of times the fish will be in a general area, and they'll move in and out from deep to shallow water. They'll go up and down the river a little ways. But blues are notorious for migrating too, so the fish that you're catching this year may not even been close to the same thing that you was catching there last year. Maybe a whole new family, a whole new group of fish.
No, and I agree. I think a lot of times, the fish are in the same general vicinities, like you said. They're around there fishing. I mean, I don't know. People laugh at me sometimes because I explain it. It's no different. A lot of times fishing, you can actually relate it to what we do every day. Look at this. Look at the state of Ohio. I live in. There's constant Columbus. There's a lot of fish in Columbus. Cincinnati. There's a lot of fish in Cincinnati. Well, you get outside there, there's not many. Same thing is going on underwater. There's areas that hold more fish than others. Then you'll go across the blank area, you'll go out in the country, there's no fish there. I mean, that's kind of, if you just look at it and you keep it simple. I think people overthink things, but if you look around, the fish are there. Now you just got to find them. So
that's it. Do you relate a lot of your fishing to structure of some sort?
Typically, yeah. I look for structure more often than not, but you also can't get hung up on that. Just like last weekend, we found those fish on a mud flat. There was nothing. The structure was down about a half mile from where we were fishing at. We looked at them on Thursday, and we saw quite a few fish down in the treetops down through there. Felt pretty good. Well, we went back on Friday. They were gone. They moved upriver just far enough. They got on a mud flat up there, and there wasn't a piece of structure up there. I mean, it was as flat could be, besides little orange dots just poking around down there. I mean, they were sitting right there, and I mean, we just went through there and just picked them off that mud flat, all morning. So, sometimes, you get stuck up on hung up on fishing the trees or the rock or whatever. Sometimes guys forget they just go just a little bit up from where they should be at. Just, expand your area a little bit, you'll find them. So
I'm a firm believer that if you found fish pre-fishing and they're gone when you go into tournament day, that they're usually not very far from there. I think they'll be pretty close. A lot of times they move. If a front most too, I've noticed that a lot of times they'll be out in deeper water, sometimes in shallow water, but they don't generally just take off and leave the area, I don't believe.
I agree with that, and I mean, kind of like you said, they're somewhere close by. They may not be in the same spot, but will they be? Is it 100 yards? Is it a quarter mile? They're usually somewhere in that vicinity. If you spend time to find them, you'll usually find a handful of them. Sometimes a group will thin out a little bit. You'll find them in smaller groups. On a time like that, you may not find the big fat group that you had, but you'll find smaller little groups of 4 or 5. That you can pick off down through there and just kind of follow them on out.
I think that's 100% correct. I talked earlier this afternoon, and you've had a couple different partners, or 2 or 3 different partners this year. That's kind of different for you. You usually fish with the same guy all the time. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I used to fish with Jeremy for years. Me and Jeremy been fishing together for a long time. Before we started fishing, the national tournaments, we fished, local tournaments on lakes here, when we were a lot younger. And then that's how we actually got started. Me and Jeremy were fishing a little small tournament at a lake called Mosquito Lake up here in Warren, Ohio, that somehow was a qualifier for the King Cat Cabela's championship. It was when the clubs could actually qualify you for the actual championship. Well, we won that tournament, and we qualified to go to the Cabela's tournament. So we were just tickled to death. And we went out to Junction City, Kansas on Lake Milford. I think and this will be close. I don't think it's exact, but you'll get the idea. I think there was 116 boats in that championship, and I think I came in 113th. But we fished together ever since, and then, Jeremy fished together with me at the beginning of this year, and he took a job down at Clayton State University, which is down by Atlanta, Georgia. So, with his new job and everything, just made it, almost impossible for him to take the time off that he was able to take off at his old job. Just getting his, roots set down there. He needs to focus on, life and getting that taken care of first. And then once he gets settled, I mean, Jeremy will be back fishing with me at some point in time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, the guys that you've had with you this year have done really well. You guys must work together really good, because you have, realistically, you've been one of the hottest guys on the going this year and last year, and I don't know for how long, but you're always consistently in the top 5 or 6 or 3. So that's pretty good that you can pick up some guys that you can work with like that and do so well.
No, I've been fortunate. Rob, who's been my primary partner after Jeremy left, I've known Rob. We've worked together now for about 15 years, and when we started working together, we started becoming buddies, and going deer hunting together, and we did a lot of fishing together, and yeah, we always get together with the family, and we've been good friends, and not only just a friendship, but working together all them years, we've just developed a bond. We kind of, I mean, our offices are beside each other. We just kind of read each other. So then Rob was an easy fit, and then Wayne, the fellow that I fished with last week, Wayne's worked with me for several years as well, and we've been fishing off and on together, for the last couple of years. He comes to Alabama with me every year. We do a fall trip in November usually, where we take a couple guys down from work, and Wayne's always one that comes down with us. So, Wayne wasn't a complete newbie to the system either. Wayne's done a lot of catfishing, locally, so he was an easy one to step in as well. So I'm pretty fortunate.
Heath Malone sent us a question on chat that wants to know what your favorite bait in the fall on rivers are.
Skipjack head.
Yeah, I kind of.
So it just a matter of how big.
Do you work trying to get fresh skipjack before every tournament, or fresh bait every tournament, or do you use froze skipjack?
I will move heaven and earth to get fresh bait if it's possible.
Yeah.
Very rarely will I go with frozen. I mean, there's been times where it has, and I've done really well in tournaments with frozen bait. I think it's depends on how the frozen bait was picked up, kept, and iced down and froze and everything. To me, makes a difference. And if you can get some good quality bait, which I'm fortunate enough to do from some fellas out of Alabama, that I don't mind using the frozen bait. But again, even if it's a shad tournament or a skipjack tournament, I will move heaven and earth to get bait. You'll see me, I'll run 250 miles to get bait at times. So
there's times when I don't think it makes any difference. They'll eat anything, and there's other times when it has to be very specific, and it has to be, if it's not fresh, you're not going to do anything at all. And the tougher the fishing is, the more important that is to me.
yeah, and I tell you, I don't mind in spring as much. It seems to be in spring, frozen will, kind of like you said, some days it don't matter. I think frozen performs, better in the spring to me. I think because, usually, at least up around our neck of the woods anyways, I can't speak for down south, but, we usually have a shad kill off, usually every early spring there. Sometime, it'll warm up and get them all freaked out, and they'll move up, and all of a sudden, boom, it'll drop cold, and there's dead shad scattered all over the place.
Right.
That at that time of the year, it seems like they don't mind the frozen near as much to me. But frozen shad, I hardly will ever throw a frozen shad. I figure I can find a fresh shad somewhere, so I won't throw frozen shad, but skipjack I will.
Yeah, frozen shad. I don't even want it froze overnight. It just gets so soft, and they don't have very good bone structure in them to keep, and I really struggle with them. I have done good in a couple of tournaments when that's all that there was, and nobody else had any fresh bait either, and it worked out. But as a general rule, I'd rather not even mess with it if I can keep from it. What's the next big tournament you're headed to?
We're actually fishing Cabela's tournament this upcoming weekend. It's in Morgantown, West Virginia. We've fished it for years. It's close. It's on the Monongahela River. It's not a big fish river. It's a couple good flatheads and some nice channels will come out of there. But it's always been close to us, so we fished it every year. We're going to hit that one, and then after that, looks like the Cabela's Championship will probably be the next one there in Gallatin, Tennessee, that will get a hit. So
that's outstanding. Are you looking forward to going down and seeing Aaron Wheatley at Monsters on the Ohio?
We are. Yep, we'll be down there. I'd like to sneak in and do a little pre-fishing down there, see if I can't do a little better. It seems to be I can catch fish everywhere else in the world but Owensboro, and I had a good one last year that I lost, but we'll see if I can't do something different this year, because right now that's the one tournament that I've struggled in, that how you always got that one that just seems to whoop you. That's been mine, and I'm bound to determined to do halfway decent in it sooner or later.
We do a lot of travel and go to a lot of tournaments, and I know you do, and that is, to me, that's the most fun event that we do every year, and we don't do really good down there either, and I'm not a fan of no current situations. I don't like lake fishing, and I don't like rivers that don't have current. But if there was ever a more fun place to go to be around some of the best people in catfishing, I haven't found it yet.
No, no. I mean, like when we first started fishing Summit Championships, you used to get a similar turnout, and get 100 boats and get to meet all the people. But those, the national trails have kind of, faded down a little bit. Aaron's put together a good thing, and he's proved to the world, if you put together a good tournament, you run it right, you take care of things, people will come. I mean, you just think if Aaron had a body of water like Wheeler or on the Mississippi River where they were pulling big hogs out. You think of the people that would show up then. I mean, look at the turnout we get now. I mean, woo wee, that thing could be a monster. Really, be a monster.
Absolutely, absolutely could. He worked so hard at making that work for him, and the whole community is behind him. He just couldn't ask for a better deal. But I've talked to George Young a couple of times, and I really believe that he has got it going on down there, and I look for that to be a huge event. I can't hardly wait to get down there. I've never fished that far down on the Mississippi River, and I've fished Mississippi River my whole life, but I've never been that far down it. So I'm excited about being there and seeing how that turns out, because I cannot imagine that area known for producing big fish and having the weigh in there at that new Bass Pro Shop, that will not being an outstanding event.
That, like I said, I'm looking forward to that because that time of year, that tournament could be just on fire. And I mean, yeah, like you said, the appeal of being able to weigh in front of Bass Pro, that I mean, you could have a pretty big turnout down there, and that could be for the guys weighing in, that could be a big thrill, and it also could be for the people watching down there. I mean, that place is liable to produce an 80 to 100-pound catfish. It's liable to produce a few of them down there as possible. So I mean, for people watching the weigh-in, that could be real exciting.
Isn't that the place, the same general area as where those 200-pounders was caught a few years ago in that tournament down there?
I believe so. I believe so.
I don't know exactly where, but I know that they put two of them in the boat, one day and one the next day. And
yep.
Harold Dodd is one of my favorite people in the whole world, and Harold put one of them in the boat, and oh shoot, I can't think of the other guy's name. You'd think I could remember his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
But he put the other one in the boat, and there was one day and one the next. So there's more down there. It's not them wasn't the only two big fish in that area, and I'm very excited for that to come to play, and I really think. What's that?
I was starting to lose there.
Oh, I think that guys like Aaron and George, that they're going out of their way to make things better for the tournament fishermen, and I think that's really a good thing, because I'm seeing some of the bigger trails kind of lose their appeal for whatever reason. Yeah, Phil King's the other guy. I don't know why I couldn't remember. Yep. But thanks, Justin. But for some reason they're not getting the number of boats and different reasons, and I have my thoughts about that, but that's neither here nor there. But these guys are putting together huge events, and they're doing it without really the experiences some of the other guys has got. But now Aaron has, like I said a while ago, he has got some of the greatest people in the world behind him. He promotes this thing year-round, and he does a really good job. And I think George will be the same way. I know that Aaron and George have talked. So this is just me talking, but it would not surprise me if that tournament next year doesn't come out with the biggest turnout ever been in a catfish tournament.
And it's got a real possibility. Like you said, I think George, I don't know George real well personally. I get to see him at the tournaments here and there. He seems like a real nice fella, and I know he's a diehard cat fisherman. And if anybody will get it done, I'm sure he can. And it seems like he's well on his way. And I mean, that's what it takes. It takes passion. And it seems like I know Aaron. It's not being selfish. Aaron's not looking for anything out of it. He's looking to build a good tournament. He's not looking to try to figure out how to make money, this, that, and the other. He's doing it because his passion for catfishing. And a lot of times, people kind of they forget about that a little bit, and forget why we're here. So
right, and some of these guys that don't believe that is a job to put some kind of thing like that on needs to try it sometime, because I'm telling you right now, that's as hard a work as you could imagine doing for no recognition at all. I mean, nobody ever say, anything about how great it was, or rarely they do. I won't say they never do. But, these guys that put on these events, whether it be Aaron or George or Cabela's or, that's a big deal to make these events happen of any size, other than a monthly tournament here or there, and even those are a lot of work to do them correctly to where you don't have much problems. So.
No, I don't think people realize. I mean, especially the thing Aaron's got going on down there. I mean, like you said, the year-round promoting, he's always involved. The planning that goes into that, it's not something you just wake up on Saturday morning and throw together. I mean, he's got a lot of people involved in that. Mapping it out. He's just taking the steps that, and I don't understand why some of the. Unfortunately, the national trails haven't looked and seen some of the things that he does, and part of business is you look at what somebody else is doing better than you, and you figure out how to do it the same or better, and that's just one thing I don't understand why they're not trying to put these events together just a little bit better, and I think they draw the boats. I mean, you look what Aaron's doing. I mean, that trail out there. I know Brad Kirkpatrick puts on out there in Kansas City. I know that one's a big one. I've never got to fish it, but the turnout he gets out there is just pretty phenomenal as well.
It is. Brad does a really good job. He takes care of his fish. He takes care of everything. And I'm not saying that there's not some things that happen, because there's going to be things that happens everywhere. But Brad works extremely hard to make Kansas City catfishing what it is, and he's done a really good job. He gets some big crowds. If he was more than just in his general area, I could see Brad competing with the big guys. Actually, and I don't mean this bad, and I hope them guys don't misunderstand me, but he runs that better than a lot of the big trails do. He does a really good job. He spends his time, puts his time in to make it happen, and that's what Aaron's doing. That's what George is going to do. These guys are and that's why when you see the national trails have 15 boats or something like that, and Brad will go out to Waverly or Brunswick, and he'll have 100 or 150 boats. The reason is because he's taking care of his fishermen. He's taking care of the sponsors, the people that's putting the added money up. He's taking care of the people, and he's running them correctly. And sure, he makes some people mad. Some of them make him mad. That's just life. I mean, some of them's going to get mad. It doesn't matter. He's still doing a good job, and that's the reason he gets the participation that he does.
That Winter Blues is going to be big also.
Winter Blues, that Daniel Parsons is just doing really good things, and I'm so happy to be affiliated with that Winter Blues on Wheeler. I'm really looking forward to being down there, and this time maybe I can get out of the boat ramp and bust the key off of my boat.
I mean, people didn't even know about it last year. I mean, Phil King didn't even know about it till the week before, and as guys were hearing about it, they were going for sure. So I think this year it's going to be really good.
I do too. It was a lot of fun last year. Justin Wolf's got a question or two for you, Carl. He wants to know what your favorite hook is, your favorite reel, and if you prefer walking baits or any other style of fishing over the other.
Favorite hook is Daiichi, D85 slide offset. Real Abu Garcia 7000. I'm a Abu Garcia baby. I don't know how many 7000s I got out there. I love them. They're tough as nails. If I could just if you put a little glue on those set screws on the side, you don't have to worry about those coming out. Those reels are tough as nails. I like those. And what was the third question?
I wanted to know if what style of drifting you like, dead sticking, walking baits, or if you prefer that specifically over anchored fishing or something else.
Well, I prefer drift fishing over anchor fishing. I'd say 95% of the time I'm probably drifting.
Right.
Now the style of drifting, I will, that'll be depending on the water that I'm fishing. I don't mind any of them really. I like walking bait. There's nothing like walking some bait back and getting a big old 50 or 60 slamming on it. But also, sometimes, drifting, suspended is where they're at. And I mean, there's also something about drifting down through there and just watching that rod, it's got sitting over there 90 degrees outside the boat, just hit the water. So, I mean, there's something about that too. So, I mean, drift fishing is the way to go for me. But, the style, like I said, that really is determined by which body of water I'm on. So I have an anchor in my boat. You ask anybody, they laugh all the time, and they don't even think I own one. Because I mean, even in the wintertime, I'm still drifting. So, I know there's the theory you can't drift and catch fish, under 50 degrees, but I'm here to tell you that's wrong.
Do you take a lot of people out and show them how to back bounce and walk baits and stuff?
I've had a few people out, but I mean, I can't say I've had a lot of people out on the boat, but I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in the parking lot and try to give them all the information I can, because, I know when I first started, some of the guys, I wasn't very good and didn't know what I was doing. And, just like I said, I learned a lot standing at the tailgate of a truck at 5 o'clock, or 11 o'clock at night, talking to people. I tried to do the same for guys. I try to give them all the information I can. So I try to give them, it's not the same as being out on the water, but, at least it'll help narrow some things down for them a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, the point I was getting at is one of the most favorite things for me is to have somebody that's never been out and showing them how to bounce behind the boat as you're drifting down that river. And even if it's a 20 or 30, hits that thing and watch them, because they think that rod's gone.
Yep.
When they slam into it, they think it's gone, and man, the look on their faces is simply amazing. And I enjoy that as much as I've seen them catch the fish, because they can't believe how much power that fish has got, and they're trying to hold on that rod. They forget about reeling. It's just a matter of self-defense to keep them from losing it,
Well, and see, I've actually had, with that, with Wayne and Rob, I've taken both of them on their first trip down the Mississippi. Rob went with me a couple years ago and fished the Bass Pro Championship because Jeremy couldn't make it, so he got a chance to go down there. That was his first trip to Mississippi, and yeah, when he he was figuring out, started out, kind of bouncing the right behind the boat, and he started figuring out how to get it out. Yeah, that's I got to see him catch. I think he got a 40 that trip down there, and I know he was tickled to death. And then Wayne, fellow that was with me this weekend, this was his actual second trip to the Mississippi. He went to Crystal City and fished with me once before, and then he got down there, and you figure pre-fishing, he nailed that 53. And yeah, that being with both those guys on their first trips, down to the Mississippi, I mean, that was fun time.
You betcha. Let's see, we got another question in here from Scott Woody. What size line do you use, and do you prefer braid or mono?
I use braid. I use Sussex 832 braid, 80 pound, and usually use 50 pound mono leader. I run Cajun line for my mono leader, and I run 50 pound Cajun, and then depending on what body of water I'm fishing, I've got several different. If I'm dragging or using a 3-way, on my sinker line, I've got some 20 and some 30 pound, and I got some heavier stuff like we use down in Mississippi on my leader line. So.
Do you say you always use Cajun for your leaders?
Yep, I mean that's what I like. I think you put 10 people in a room, you get 10 different opinions on leader line, but that's always been tough for me, and it don't lose fish on it, so I'm happy with it. But it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm a firm believer if something is working, there's no sense of trying. You know, and I'll always try stuff, but I usually end up going back for something that I've never had any issues with because, like you say, if it ain't broke, there ain't no sense of messing with it. Just keep on doing what you're doing, and that works out the very best for me.
Well, and again, it's your rods. Once you figure out, your rod, your reel, your line, and everything set up, don't worry about it. If you don't need to change it, don't worry about it. A lot of guys, oh, there's a new leader line. I want to go use this. Well, you're taking time away from actually focusing on, if you're tournament fishing, you're taking time away from trying to figure out, the water you're on. You're worried about your rod, your equipment. Focus on the fishing. And I don't try to overthink anything. I don't try to overcomplicate it. I just, there's been a lot of people fishing for a lot of years before us, and they've been catching a lot of fish. Yeah, you try to do new things and get better at the techniques that they've already established, but that's just it. Somebody else has already established most of the techniques. You just need to fine-tune yourself with them.
I agree 100%. I really do. That's some. Do you, when you're back bouncing, are you using circle hooks or are you using different style hooks?
Now, I'm using circle hooks.
Back bounce.
Yep. Okay. Nope, I bounce it right back to them, and you just hold that rod in your hand and just let them take it.
I've done it that way. There's something about when they hit that, I just like to, lay it on a little bit.
And see, I just kind of, as I've been teaching the guys, once they feel that little tap and they gets ready to go, you just hold it. You don't move. You just, just kind of pretend you're the rod holder, and you just hold it, and that circle hook will set itself.
That's exactly what happens. That's for sure. They're a lot of fun. Back bouncing is fun to do, and if the fish are cooperating with you and you get into several of them a day, it's a ton of fun.
Yep.
And I believe that it's like anything else. You just present the bait in front of so many more fish than any other way I know of to fish that it works very well. It just does. But there's some days that we just don't. For whatever reason. And last weekend was one of them. The water was dropping and fish was tough, and not this past weekend, weekend before, and we anchored up on fish and done really well, but there's days when anchor fishing just don't produce, and you're just wasting your time. I like walking baits, I really do, but sometimes that doesn't work for me either, and that's where you have to adapt and go to a different outline of things, and maybe your rig's wrong, maybe you need to use a float or something that's suspended a little higher off the bottom, and I think people are afraid to try things. But if you're in fish and they're not biting, I believe that there's a reason they're not, and a lot of times I think it's because the bait's just not presented to them the way they want it.
No, and that's just it, and that's kind of pre-fishing. You got to throw out a lot of different styles. And you got to figure out which one of those is working. I agree. Bait presentation is, it's key. Whether you're dragging it, whether like you said, whether you got a float on it, lifting it up off the bottom, whether you're suspending it, you got to figure out, which way is, turning them on that day. I mean, because what worked for you Friday. I mean, I've sat out there and drag around and catch fish, wheeler, pulling baits, 50 yards behind me, caught them all day long. Went out there and did the same thing the next day. Couldn't catch a fish, but they'd moved up. They were hitting suspended bait that day. I mean, that's they do change. I mean, sometimes it's overnight. Sometimes you can follow the same pattern for 2 weeks. I mean, I haven't figured that part out yet to explain to you why that happens like it does. But it just, you just got to be open-minded when it comes to it. But you still, you still don't want to overthink it. The guys really overthink it a lot. You got to have your 4 or 5, styles, and try to get good at those different ways of fishing. Because I mean, some guys spread themselves so thin, they know how to fish all of them, but they're not any good at any of them.
I agree, and the ones that's got it figured out in 2 or 3 ways, they're always going to be on fish and do really well. And what works one day may not work the next day, and if you're able to adapt and find what's working each individual day, I think you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, and that's just a trick because I mean, and I think we all do it. Sometimes we get stubborn, and we're setting our ways to a certain extent, and they're going to bite this, they're going to hit it, and then come 10 o'clock in the morning, you start thinking, well, maybe I was wrong, and you start switching up at that point. But no, I mean that's just it. And I think guys just try some things, be open minded. I mean, like you said, some guys try too much, some guys won't try nothing. So just finding a happy medium of it all, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Justin wants to know if you've ever had them drop the bait before your rod loads up with a circle hook and not being able to set the hook.
Yeah, I've had them pick the bait up before, and and then mouth it, and give it a pull, and then drop it all of a sudden. I mean, but I've had them do the same thing, dragging. They'll pick up on it. Some days it just seems like they can feel that, that they feel that tension on that line more than others. I don't know, and I mean they drop it quicker. But yeah, I mean I've had them do that. Yes.
Yeah, I have too. But I've had them do that with regular hooks before you could jerk it. Try to set the hook. They didn't turn loose of it. You're just grabbing bare water or whatever.
Hey, Lyle, I got a quick question for him.
Lay it on us.
Hey, on the circle hooks, do you buy a circle hook that has a slight tip offset, or do you bend your own offset in the hook?
I buy them; they're already offset. So, and those I mean have worked fine for me. I mean, you know yeah, I miss a fish once in a while and don't hook up, but I mean I can't tell you I know, but we hook up more often than not. It hasn't been a problem. We used to use the Gamatsu hooks for a long time, and then I kind of fell out with them, about 5 years ago. I just they started making them cheaper and cheaper, and it just seemed like they just weren't the same as they were when they first came out. And I switched over those Daiichis, and I mean for me, I've been a happy guy, and I mean I've tried some other hooks, and I've got a few other ones in the tackle box that I've had, but I mean I'm a Daiichi kid all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I told myself that I would never buy a circle hook with an offset in it because I really can't stand gut hook and all that. But this past weekend, I offset my hooks for the first time, and I mean, it was just an unbelievable difference in the hookup ratio. I
Yeah.
mean, I still had a couple of takedowns that I didn't get, but my percentage rate just jumped straight up. So if everybody else is doing it, you're gonna have to jump on the bandwagon and do it, and just maybe not do it when you're fun fishing or whatever. But if people's offsetting their hooks during tournaments and getting away from not taking a chance on gut hook, and I guess I'm gonna have to do it too. But it really helped this weekend. It did big time. So I'm a true believer in it now.
Yeah, no, I've always liked the slide offset. I mean that's just I've tried several different ones, and that just always seemed to be the one that I had a higher hookup with, and kind of like anything, you try a handful of stuff, and you narrow it down to the one you like, and I just heck, I just set up bottom dwellers to send me a bunch last night because I was running low after that Mississippi River trip. We went down there, and we was struggling on Thursday a little bit trying to fish some timber, and I think we donated more lead and hooks than we did anything in the first 3 hours.
If you get on fish and they're down there on that tree or whatever, and you get hung up, do you go ahead and just cut your line with scissors, or do you shake that tree and take a chance on them fish running off?
Now we like to break our line off as soon as possible. If fish are down there, and we don't. I mean, you don't want to go pulling on that tree too hard. I mean, them fish ain't going to be there no longer. I mean, especially depending on how big of a tree it is, whatnot. That 80-pound braid, pretty tough stuff. And I mean, a lot of times we'll break off chunks of trees,
Right.
and end up pulling up a chunk with it. And after that, you're not going to circle back around and catch those fish.
Right.
It just. I mean, if it is, it's going to be a little while later. You spooked them out of that area, and so not to mention it's hard on your equipment as well too.
Right. You just recommend the guys to break that line and go ahead and tie another one on and get it back down there instead of just spending a lot of time on trying to get it out and scaring the fish off.
That's my opinion on it, and I mean, I've seen guys that cut them with scissors. I've seen guys that if you're drifting, it's got a 10-inch piece of old garden hose that you just take and you just twist around the line right above the reel real quick, so the tension, is pulling on that garden hose as opposed to pulling on the actual reel. Because I mean, I tore up a lot of 7,000, Abu Garcias, on the Mississippi River, with a dead stick hanging out, getting snagged up, and next thing you know, look back and it's just cranking on that reel, and there ain't a whole lot you can do about it. So, you're just better off, to be prepared to cut it and or break it, whatever method you want to use.
Just have all your stuff ready to tie on quick, and you don't waste hardly any time.
Now we usually, like this one, I think we had 20 leaders tied up in the kitty ready to go for tournament day. You had new ones already on the poles ready to go because we were walking some baits, and so we had the pole we was walking. We had the backup pole strung up, so that way if we did break off, it would just sit that one down. Slap a new piece of bait on the other one back in the water, because when you're in the zone and when you're in them fish, sometimes shoot, we wasn't hitting but about it couldn't have been 300-400 yard little section, where we're banging all the fish. And on the Mississippi River, you can be in that little spot and out of it before you know what's going on. So, we ended up having everything ready to roll, so we could just, pop it right back down in there. So, yeah, we always have things tied up ready.
Yeah, well, when the fish quit biting, do you turn around and go back through them as many times as it takes?
We didn't leave that section of the river all day. We fished it from 6:30 to 2 o'clock the other day, and never left it. So
I heard that. Good information out there. I appreciate it. That's what guys need to hear.
That's great information. Jason, what's to know what your favorite area is to drift on a river?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Usually, I like to start, on the river. Depending on which river, that's a hard one, man. I go out, if it's a new river like down here, I started looking in the bends, for the fish. That's usually where I'll start at. Work my way on down into the straightaway, because they're not always in the corners like everybody thinks. I've caught a lot of fish that are sitting out there in the straightaways that people just drive right by. So that's a tough question, but I'd say I'd start in the corners, and I usually start in about anywhere from 30 to 60 foot of water, depending on where I'm at. I'll start. I usually don't go no shallower than that. I'm a deep water type of guy. I usually start 30 as my shallowest. So
right. Greg's in chat, wants to know what kind of boat do you use?
2008 Triumph center console with a 150 Yamaha on it.
That's like Justin made a post on here that that's a large bay boat, and that is basically what it is, isn't it?
What's that?
A bay boat, a large bay boat.
Yeah, it's a large bay boat basically. It's just it's got a deeper V on it, than a bay boat. It's got a good V hull on it, then it's got kind of the flat bottom back on it, because it's only got an 18-inch draft, but yet it's got a big nose to cut through the waves. So, like I said, I bought it up on Lake Erie. It's made to tolerate some pretty windy conditions, and that's one reason I got it. Like I said, I sacrifice speed for comfort. It's a safe boat being out there on any of the rivers. It can take a beating. I'm not worried about anybody falling out of it. To me it's safe, and I'd rather sacrifice a shade of safety for the fastest boat in the tournament. And if you nail down your water, you don't need the fastest boat in the tournament.
That's you're not the first person that said that. Casey Tudorow is another prime example of that. Casey and John LeMaster, they're very successful, and they don't have a big fast boat, but they do a lot of winning.
Yep, no, Casey and they're good, tough guys. I don't get to see him much, but at Monsters. But yeah, that guy is always on some good fish.
Oh, he is, and it's good guys. Both of them. They're just really good guys. I see them every year down at Monsters, and it's always good to see them guys. And very polite, courteous young men. Is the kind of people we're proud to have into catfishing. I gotta ask you a question that really it pertains to fishing, but it doesn't really pertain to fishing. I know that you're at all these tournaments, and you know all the Jeff Dodds, and you know all the Massengill brothers, and all these guys. Who do you think is the biggest character in all of catfishing? Just a character.
That'd probably be Jeff Dodd. Jeff Dodd, I tell you, he's always a hoot to be around. I enjoy fishing with him, and I'd say 99% of the time that man's got a smile on his face, and doesn't matter if he's win or lose, it's a happy guy, and he's usually having some kind of fun. So he's probably my favorite character.
He's a great guy. We had him on the show, one of the best shows. He was really on Daryl and Jason, and it was so much fun. I hope that when we get to the Monsters of the Ohio, and I don't know if you know this or not, but last year we done a live show out of the bait store down there, and we're going to do it again. Bass and Moore was nice enough to ask us to come back down there, and we'll be doing that. We're going to try to do it live. We videotaped it out of there, and we done a show at the Ramada Inn last year, and we're going to try to do a live one out of Bass and Moore if we can get everything to work and the internet connection strong enough. And I would love to have you on. I know Chuck and I would be just thrilled if you'd come on live with us down there. But if we could get Jeff Dodd and Daryl and Jason on at the same time, can you imagine what kind of show that'd be?
That would be a riot, because I don't know that there's a tournament Jeff isn't giving Daryl and Jason some kind of static. So I don't even think they got to be at the tournament sometimes, and he's still calling them, giving them static. It seems like.
They wasn't on the show when he was on the show, and they was very polite, and they talked very nice about Jeff, and he did about them too. But I mean, when we asked him about them boys, I mean, he got on them. It was one of the most fun shows that we did, probably.
Yeah, it's so bad that work gets in the way of things that people can do. The Massengills, they had the number one launch position last year and was unable to make it because one of them couldn't get off work. So
yeah, now I heard they couldn't make it this last week there to Covington because of work. I know that's a challenge. I mean, because yeah, I mean, and you hate to not see them come, because you love to fish against guys like that, and because I mean, it's fishing against guys like Jeff Dodd, Larry Muse, Daryl, and Jason. I mean, I used to come to these tournaments and just get my tail whooped, and I'd go home and I'd be at the bottom of the pack, but I'd always go to weigh in, no matter if I caught a fish or not. Even if it was 0, 1, or 2, I'd go weigh it in just so I could stand there and I could talk to those guys, even if it was for 5 minutes. So just so I could learn a little bit from them, figure out what in the heck I was doing wrong, and I mean, those guys were, like I said, were nice enough to, they don't know by far did they tell me any secrets or anything. They just, they give you a little tidbit here or there that you'd say, huh, that makes sense, so.
Yeah, I would go watch Phil King weigh in and not even fish the tournament and stand there and ask him questions. I just show up to watch the weigh-in, and yeah, it's good stuff being able to do that.
Yeah, Phil King, we used to idolize Phil King. He was the man in catfishing when we were younger. He was catching all those fish, and I remember we was the first time we went down to Wilson Pickwick Lake. We wasn't fishing a tournament or anything. We was just learning how to catfish. We couldn't catch a fish down there to save our tail. Sean, Jeremy's brother, was fishing with us. He emails, he gets on Phil King's website and he emails him and asks for help. How can we catch fish down here? So.
Oh yeah, he'll help you any way he can.
Yeah, he will. He's a very good guy as well. So I enjoy seeing Phil and Tim at the tournaments. No matter how good or bad they do, they always walk around. They shake everybody's hand they can. I mean, they're real good people.
Oh yeah, I learned that from him, and I try to do the exact same thing just because I seen him do it. I'll shake everybody's hand.
That is one of the things that separate the catfishing groups from some of the other sports.
What's that?
Do you believe that the camaraderie and the courtesy towards each other is one thing that separates the catfishing bunch away from some of the others?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think we all got a lot of work to do, and because there's still just too much, there's too many groups. There's not enough, unity. I think that, if we could just all get along, I think catfishing could really be big. But I mean, I've met a lot of great people, through catfishing. I got a lot of people that I can call, friends all across the United States now that, I otherwise wouldn't have had, and I got a lot of people that I could hang up and I'd call right now if I needed something, would, give me all the help they could, good people. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, listen, Carl, we appreciate you taking your time to be on Catfish Weekly with us so much. It was outstanding having you on here. And if you get a chance to be on the show with us live down at Bass and More in Owensboro, probably be Thursday before the tournament, we'd sure like to have you on there. And whoever's going to be fishing that with you, bring them on. And we'd love to visit with you a little bit. I think it'd be really good. Hopefully we can get everybody. We had a bunch on last year and had a really good time, and try to get a bunch more on and do that. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show and taking your time away from what you're doing to share your information with all of us.
Well, I appreciate the invite, Lyle and Chuck. It was a pleasure joining you guys as well. And let's talk before Owensboro. I'll stop by Bass and More. I was actually down at Bass and More a couple years ago, doing a little thing, so I'm familiar with them folks. They're a real good place down there as well. So yeah, I don't mind stopping by and seeing you down there sometime.
Oh, that'd be great. Listen.
Get down here to Gunnersville and show me some stuff, man. I need a top 5 in this one.
You got some good competition down there with Old Bridges and Mitchell, and that's some tough water down there.
Oh, it is.
Well, listen, Carl, I know you got some sponsors and stuff. If you'd like to thank any of them or mention them or anything, we'll give you a few minutes here to go through whatever you need to do. And again, thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight.
Thank you very much again, Lyle. And I'd like to say thanks to Ken Luttrell with Fat Boy Custom Rods. Ken builds a good rod, and he's a good fellow himself. Also, Steve Douglas with Monster Rod Holders. Those are two products that I believe in. I started using Monster Rod Holders when I first started catfishing, and I like the rod holder, and I think Steve's done some good things with it. And like I said, I love those two pieces. Ken builds a good pole for me and keeps me stocked with them, and because I'm hard on equipment as much fishing as I do, so he does a good job taking care of me. So thanks to those fellas.
Well, that's great. I know Kenny myself. He's an outstanding guy. We've talked on the phone a few times. I met him at some tournaments, and he'd ask me questions. I'd help him all I can, and I feel that if I had a question that I needed him to help me with, that he would do so. And from my personal opinion of Kenny Luttrell, he is one of the not only is he a great rod builder, he's a great fisherman. Kenny does very well in a lot of tournaments himself, and they're just good people. I mean,
well, and that's part of the reason why I'm with Fat Boy Lyle. Is it's not for what he can do for me. People always say, well, gosh, you could probably get this sponsor, you could get that sponsor, you could do this. I'm not really, trying to figure out how many people I can, slap on my boat and, get all their names and see who's going to pay for what. I just really like the people, and that's number one to me. Before I'll say anything about the product, I got to believe in it, and I got to believe more in the people that I'm dealing with there just as much. So.
He's a top-notch guy, I think, the world. And there's some of the builders that think they're catfish rod builders. It's not what they think they are. Kenny Luttrell's not that kind of guy. If he tells you something, that's the way it's going to be. And I know he's a busy guy. Believe me, we've talked about that time and time again. He stays busy, makes good product, and that's the kind of thing. I know Chuck had said something about, you had a different sponsor. It doesn't matter. This show is about promoting catfishing and the great people in the sport, and Kenny's one of them. We were so pleased to have you on the show tonight, and thanks again for taking your time and doing it.
No, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Chuck, you got any closing statements?
No, I'm good for tonight. There's not too much going on in the next couple of weeks. So.
Okay. We've got Twisted Cat Outdoors is having a tournament at Columbia Bottoms in St. Louis Saturday. Be a night tournament, start at 7 o'clock Saturday night and 7 o'clock Sunday morning. This is the makeup tournament this is the second time it's been rescheduled. everybody kept wanting to get this tournament in. So there's your chance to go to St. Louis. I believe I'm hearing it's a little tough down there. But you know the fish are always there. They're always on at Missouri. They're always on at Mississippi. So if you want to get into a night tournament, come down there and fish. Danny McGraw. I don't have the information on hand here. I'll have it for next week. Is having a Fishing for Autism tournament coming up the 29th, I believe, and I'll get all the information, have that lined up for us next week. It's a good cause if anybody gets a chance to go up there. They have been laying out some great fish on that Missouri River from the western half of Missouri all year long. So there'll be some great fish caught up there. So if you get a chance, go up there and fish that. I believe that's all I have for this week. I want to thank everybody in chat and thank everybody for watching the show. Carl, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you all down the road. With that, that's it for the show. See you all next week.